Hello, welcome to Jim Reads Too Slow. I am Jim. I thought I would do a wrap up for my reading during the month of January. Kind of took it a little easy this month. Spent most of it on Flannery O'January, reading and digesting the work of Flannery O'Connor. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail about her biography, that it's out there. Everybody has covered that. She was a Southern writer. She died young from lupus, but she showed her genius in the time that she had, writing two novels and many short stories. I started off with her second novel. I read The Violent Buried Away. Then I read several of her short stories from this collection, A Good Man is Hard to Find, and also from her overall collection of short stories. And then I finished up with Wise Blood, her first novel. I read several of her short stories interspersed in among all of that. A Good Man is Hard to Find, The River, The Life You Save May Be Your Own, Enoch and the Gorilla, a story that turned into a chapter in Wise Blood, which several of her stories end up as parts of The Violent Buried Away and Wise Blood. And I have to say, overall, I love Flannery O'Connor. I'm so glad that I took part in this event. O'Connor isn't for everyone. That's right off the top. Someone said recently that read her if you like horror. I'm not going to argue with that. I do not like horror. Maybe now I like gothic horror. O'Connor was a devout Roman Catholic, and her faith plays a major role in her stories. She described herself as a Christian realist. There's good and evil in her stories. Good is salvation, finding and accepting Jesus, coming to accept God's plan for you. And evil is alienation from God. She saw the secular world as that, alienated from God. And so when you're living in that kind of world, the stories you tell kind of, to make the point, have to be hard and harsh. And a lot of her stories definitely are that. That being said, she doesn't beat you over the head with her beliefs. Her stories aren't necessarily preachy. They're not crystal clear either. So you can approach them from different angles if you're so inclined. An example of that is Wise Blood. Now that book is laugh out loud funny, although bits of it are kind of horrible. It's the story of Hazel Motes, who is the grandson of an old tent preacher. He comes back from World War II believing himself to be an atheist. He runs into a blind street preacher, and he's so incensed by this preacher that he decides to start his own church. He's going to preach an anti-Christ message, and he carries out his plan. Then one day he wanders off into the rain, and spoiler alert, that's the end of Hazel Motes. It's a good, solid story. But after I read it, while I was thinking about it, I read where O'Connor said that Hazel Motes' story is a retelling of the Apostle Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus from the Bible book of Acts. And when I read that, it was like, okay, yeah, I get it. All those little bits and pieces that she had sprinkled through the story just kind of fell into place. And I could see what she was trying to say. So anyway, she does use humor in her stories, but these are not feel-good stories by any means. Especially the novels. In those, her characters are grotesque. They're misfits. They inhabit the fringes of society. They're dirty. They're ignorant. They're angry and intense. And they're not at all shy about it either. They get in your face. None of them are particularly likable characters. You question their sanity because they're in crisis all the time. Her main protagonists feel themselves being pulled by God towards something that they don't want to have a part in. And so they fight, but fight as they will. They just can't escape. They're wallowing in this southern fire and brimstone brand of Christianity. It's not a warm brotherhood, God is love kind of religion. You don't turn to it for comfort, or you don't turn to it for the answers to life's big questions. It's simple, it's angry, it's often violent. It's an in-your-face, save your soul because judgment is coming kind of religion. Somebody said the other day that judgment in O'Connor's stories, more often than not, includes horrific death. Whether the person has found salvation or not. Either way. And it's where your soul goes after you meet that violent death. That's what matters in her stories. Like I said, there's good versus evil in these stories. But if you're a modern, secular reader, it's not the kind of good, probably, that you'll be able to identify with. Not at first. It'll seem backwards. An example is The Violent Bear It Away. You might be rooting for young Tarwater's school teacher uncle. He wants to liberate Tarwater from this nutty backwoods religion that his old, crazy great uncle has warped him with. But that's what makes the school teacher evil. He represents society alienated from God. The crazy old uncle is right. So I also watched the 1979 movie based on Wise Blood, directed by John Huston and starring Brad Dourif as Hazel Motes. The movie stays fairly close to the book. I did really like it. I did, but I like the book better. So would I do this again? Yes, I would. I'm up for reading Flannery O'Connor anytime. I plan to keep on reading her until I've read everything that she wrote. Then I'll start over again. I love her imagery. I love her humor, her language. I just highly recommend her stories. So, that was Flannery O'January. Now, in books unrelated to Flannery O'Connor, I should say I do not have a hard copy of Wise Blood. I'll try to, I have it on my Kindle, so I'll try to throw some kind of graphic in there at some point. Where was I? I finished Leonard Gardner's Fat City. I've talked about this before. Not at all religious, but it is funny. The characters also are kind of dirty and fringy. I would say they're more stupid than they are ignorant, though. It's a story of a group of boxers in Stockton, California during the 1950s. None of them are going to be stars. Life is not turning out well for them. And by and large, it's all their own fault. Okay, I am continuing also to read Robert Jordan's The Eye of the World, the first book in his Wheel of Time series. I'm a third of the way through it right now, and so I may get finished with it before the next season of the TV adaptation airs. We'll see. No guarantees. I also started a buddy read with my daughter. We're reading, she wants to finish, finally, to get all the way through John Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath before she tackles East of Eden. Kind of the same way, so we're helping each other get through it. I'm also trying to, this is my reading copy, and I'm also trying to get all the way through it for the first time. We started on the 21st of January, and I am a third of the way through that one too, approaching the spot where I usually bog down when I try to read it. It's just so bleak. Bleak. So that's my January. Like I said, I kind of took it easy. I didn't push it too hard. But I'm looking forward to jumping into some Conan the Barbarian tomorrow as I start February Fantasy Stories. That's a reading event throughout the month of February, conceived by Scott and Becky at the Bookish Bryants. I'm honored and excited to be one of the hosts for that event. You can look at the video I did about that or any of the videos by any of the other hosts who I will list below. So I'll be reporting back in a few days about that. And until then, thank you for your time, BookTube.